Danny, you okay?
It's just a bad memory.
It's in the past.
I hope so.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. We just learned that Marvel is working on a new Iron Fist TV series, and apparently there's going to be a totally new version of Iron Fist in the MCU, both this year and another new version in the next couple of years, and it's all part of them bringing back all the Marvel and Netflix Defenders characters, starting with Daredevil Born Again, Kingpin, the Punisher we know is coming back during that, Jessica Jones, who we know is coming back. So I'll explain Marvel's current plan to redeem the Iron Fist character just in general, and their plan to give the Danny Rand Netflix Iron Fist, like Finn Jones Iron Fist, a chance to redeem the character himself. Yes, they do have a plan to redeem him in the MCU too, but apparently it's a whole different thing. So if you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. I've been doing a bunch of Daredevil Born Again videos because we just got a bunch of footage and first looks. They just started filming, so there's a bunch of teasers out there. I'll post links for that at the end of this and down in the description below. There's going to be a whole lot of Daredevil coming next year. And as you've probably seen the news the past couple of weeks, Marvel has a bunch of big Iron Fist plans, and just generally Marvel Netflix Defenders plans as they're bringing back all those characters. They canonize them to the MCU, starting with the Echo series. Like, apparently they sat down when they were making the Echo series and were like, okay, let's actually canonize this formally, even though people had always felt like it had been canon to the MCU unofficially.
Up until this point, we've been a little bit cagey about what's sacred timeline, what's not sacred timeline. That was born of, frankly, a period at the studio where we were like, we have to stick the landing with Avengers. Sure. You know, it was another part of the company developing the Netflix stuff. We were aware of what they were doing. They were aware of what we were doing, but it was a lot. It was a lot to balance anyway. But now that some time has passed. Now that we see how well integrated the stories are, we would be confident in saying it is part of the sacred time.
Turns out the reason for all that confusion back in the day when the Marvel Netflix series were actually going was because of all the contract issues between Netflix and Marvel, the Marvel TV people, which were like a totally separate group from the Marvel movie people who are now in charge of all the TV shows, even though they themselves have also reorganized the way that Marvel makes TV shows and brought in actual TV people, which now more closely resembles the way that Marvel TV used to be. The circle is now complete. Like, they started out thinking that the movie people could do all the TV stuff, and now they're just back to making the TV stuff like they used to make all the TV stuff. But the big news right now is they just announced 2 new versions of Iron Fist. The first time we're going to see an Iron Fist again in the MCU, it's actually going to be one of these totally new versions of the character during that stealth Black Panther series that Marvel is releasing later this year. I say stealth series because they haven't released any big trailers or promos for it yet, and they barely said anything about it publicly despite doing a ton of work on it behind the scenes. Like, it sounds like it's going to be a really cool series, but it's just weird that they haven't said anything about it. Like, oh, by the way, we have this whole big thing that we haven't told you about. They formally announced it back at a presentation for What If Season 2 at the end of last year, where they showed off a couple episodes, and during that they announced their entire 2024 animated TV slate of shows. Part of that list was the new Spider-Man Freshman Year series, which they're calling Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man now. Funny enough, Charlie Cox is coming back during that show as his version of Daredevil. I think Vincent D'Onofrio is also coming back as his version of Kingpin during that. They're also featuring Benedict Cumberbatch's version of Doctor Strange, but it's meant to be kind of an Elseworlds type of show, so it kind of exists in this weird multiverse state in the MCU. But don't worry, I'll talk more about that in separate videos when we start getting trailers for it. There's the X-Men 97 episodes, which are actually coming up in March. We'll get a trailer for that really soon. And then there's the Black Panther Eyes of Wakanda series. It's one of a couple Black Panther TV series Marvel's working on right now. Some of them are live action, some are animated. Like, there's an Okoye Midnight Angel series that will happen eventually. But this totally new version of Iron Fist in the MCU is supposed to be an ancient Iron Fist, and I think, based on the whole synopsis of this Black Panther series plot, it's meant to be the very first Iron Fist in the MCU who ever existed. If you haven't read the comics, that's the Iron Fist who was a member of the Avengers 1 million BC team with Odin, the first human version of Phoenix, the original Black Panther, Bashanga, the original Sorcerer Supreme, Agamotto, who created the Eye of Agamotto that Doctor Strange uses in the MCU. Their stand-in version of the Hulk was the Star Brand. Star Brand is like a completely different power set, different character inside Marvel Comics, but it was sort of like the stand-in for Hulk on that Avengers team. They formed in the actual year 1 million BC when cave people were running around on Earth to fight a Celestial who would come to Earth seeking another dead Celestial that had crashed to Earth in sort of a twist on the Eternals plot. Like it was a slightly different version of the Eternals movie plot with Odin in a version of his Avengers team when he was young. This new Black Panther series is supposed to follow a special team of Dora Milaje who search for vibranium around the world trying to keep it from falling into anyone's hands. Both villains and heroes, if the current Black Panther during any era doesn't specifically gift it to anyone. Really good example is during the first Captain America movie during World War II, T'Challa, Black Panther's grandfather, was still king of Wakanda and was still relatively young. He gifted the vibranium for Captain America's shield to the United States and Howard Stark, so he specifically intended for them to have Captain America's shield. He didn't know at the time that they'd turn it into a shield. He just gave them the raw vibranium metal ore, and Howard Stark was the one who came up with the idea to turn it into a shield. That's why they had the jokes about it in Avengers Age of Ultron.
And S.H.I.E.L.D. never even
The
thought
most
to.
versatile substance on the planet. And they used it to make a frisbee. Typical of humans.
So that Black Panther series seems like it's going to be showing the team across history, and it's Marvel's way of using other versions of Black Panther from previous parts of the timeline, like the older versions of Black Panther, because in real life they can't use Chadwick Boseman's T'Challa anymore, but you can do all the previous versions of Black Panther. That's why they used his father, the T'Chaka Black Panther, during the 1980s Avengers episodes in What If. Same idea with this new Black Panther series, just an opportunity to see other previous Black Panthers, and we might see the original Black Panther, Bashanga, because they featured him during the first Black Panther movie, but we've never actually seen him in live action or even in animation, like you just see depictions of him. He would have been alive when Fan Fei, the original Iron Fist, was alive. But the timeline of the comics is very different from the timeline of the MCU. The MCU timeline is compressed a lot. So like Asgardians don't live quite as long. Odin isn't quite as old inside the MCU. But it's the same basic concept. Fan Fei grew up in Kunlun and trained in martial arts like everybody that grew up in Kunlun. At this point in history, the people of their celestial city were way more advanced than the cave people of Earth, obviously, because you're talking about 1 million BC. Her backstory also crosses over a little bit with the Eternals backstory in the MCU movie. She fought a lot of those ancient deviants that came to Earth, so she is kind of connected to a lot of MCU stuff already. The only other version of Iron Fist I could think that it would be, if they're going to do an ancient version of the character, is if they go with the Marvel Netflix Iron Fist version of history, which is a little bit different from the timeline of the comics. And on the Marvel Netflix Iron Fist series, Danny Rand said the legend of Iron Fist is that the original person to kill the dragon and take the power of the Iron Fist was Wu Aoshi, the pirate queen of Pinghai Bay, who was the ancestor of Colleen Wing. She was the Iron Fist during the 1500s of the comics, but in the comics, the Iron Fist lineage goes way back to, say, 1 million BC in Fan Fei. My assumption is that when they used Wu Aoshi for Colleen Wing's backstory, it was because Fan Fei as a character hadn't really been created until the Iron Fist series had been up and running, like it already premiered, so she wasn't really on the showrunner's radars till after they introduced that connection in the comics. Otherwise, they probably would have just said that Colleen Wing was the descendant of Fan Fei. The whole idea, though, in the show's backstory is that Danny Rand believed Colleen came from her line and thus had a claim, an ancient claim, to the Iron Fist, and it was the show's way of explaining why she could possess it. Like, this is why you should be the Iron Fist. At the time, the Netflix Iron Fist series had started to get into the history of the Iron Fist heading into Season 3, like all the previous versions of the character. They were starting to feature more of those versions, like Orson Randall was probably going to show up on the series at some point, who had been the Iron Fist before Danny Rand during the World War II era. They got really trippy with the power of Iron Fist during the Season 2 finale, like Danny Rand uses a Kunlun ceremony to transfer the power of Iron Fist to Colleen Wing, but he somehow keeps the power himself too, which is why there are two versions of Iron Fist in the present day of the MCU. And because they canonized all the Marvel Netflix series to the MCU, they did explain in present day, Colleen Wing still has the power of Iron Fist, Danny Rand still exists, he still has the power. And apparently Marvel is open to bringing him back, Finn Jones as Danny Rand. So it sounds like they don't plan to recast Danny Rand specifically, which is in line with their plans for Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, the other Defenders characters just in general, bringing everyone back that they can. Originally, I think a lot of us expected Marvel to never bring him back and never mention the character again, like either recast completely or just do a totally different version and sidestep Danny Rand altogether. Like, what? There was never a Danny Rand. We don't know what you're talking about. Especially when they introduced the Shang-Chi character, like, oh, they're focusing on Shang-Chi now. He is like the main martial artist, superpowered being of the MCU. But I think part of the idea is their plan for Shang-Chi is that he's more of an Avengers-level character, like they're making him a more cosmic-leaning character just in general because of the alternate dimension. I think their plans for the future of the Iron Fist character are to keep him more of a street-level hero. And as part of all this, Marvel also just announced they're developing a totally new Iron Fist series with an Iron Fist who is not Danny Rand. They didn't really get into the details of it, so my assumption right now is that it was connected to the ancient Iron Fist Fan Fei or Wu Aoshi, and they'd introduced during the Black Panther series like a backdoor pilot, the way they used to do on all the original Marvel Netflix series, like you see Luke Cage show up on the Jessica Jones series, then he goes off to his own spin-off series. But because it's so early days right now with this new Iron Fist TV series, they can actually just do a new Iron Fist series in present day of the MCU alongside the other Defenders characters who are also coming back. They could just have it be Colleen Wing coming back because Jessica Henwick said that she specifically turned down a role in the new Shang-Chi movie, I think as Shang-Chi's sister, because she said if she did that, she wouldn't be able to come back as Colleen Wing. So at the time, she made it sound like there were plans to eventually bring the Colleen Wing character back in some way. Now, because we got all this talk about Daredevil Born Again and them canonizing the Marvel Netflix series to the MCU, it makes a little bit more sense, like, oh, that's what's going on. And if they do an Iron Fist series with her, they can just bring the Danny Rand Iron Fist back as a way to slowly redeem the original Iron Fist series, but this time, just a much better creative vision for the characters.
I mean, I love Danny Rand. I love Danny Rand. I love that character. I love everything about him. I think he's such a jewel. A lot of room for growth. Personally, where I would like to see the reintroduction of the character would be something like a Heroes for Hire TV series. I think that would be the most dynamic and the most fun way to reintroduce those characters. And I think I loved working with Mike. I loved the on-screen chemistry between Danny and Luke. I'd love to pick up the mantle again and keep moving this character forward, and make it the best possible Iron Fist that there could be.
There are a couple bright spots during the original Iron Fist series, and I think Season 2, they started to address a lot of the complaints of Season 1, like the very, very bad fight choreography issues. By the time they got to Luke Cage Season 2, they'd already started doing Heroes for Hire stuff, so you could see things improving in leaps and bounds. And because in present day, Daredevil Born Again is essentially meant to be like Daredevil Season 4 with just like a slightly different title, they can do the same thing with this new Iron Fist TV series. Why not just take all the ideas that you wanted to do during Iron Fist Season 3 on Netflix and incorporate that into a new MCU series? Just take the time to make it good. This also gives them a chance to do an Iron Fist versus Shang-Chi fight in the MCU. Still want to see that go down in some way.
It would be nice to see Colleen come back and still have that Iron Fist as well. I think it would be cool if she showed up in Shang-Chi, and still had the Iron Fist. And there's so much possibility that you can do with this, where we left off for Season 2.
Let me know in the comments if they're going to do a new Iron Fist TV series at some point with like a totally different spin on the Iron Fist character. How do you want that to go down? Like, do you just want them to do a version of Colleen Wing and then roll in Danny Rand at some point? Or do you want it to be a completely different Iron Fist during a totally different part of the timeline? There's a bunch of big stuff coming up. We'll get a bunch more Daredevil Born Again footage really soon too. Click here for that last big teaser with a bunch of those Marvel Netflix characters coming back. And click here for my new Deadpool 3 teaser trailer. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.